Superman is kind of a weird character. In this era, he was pretty simple, and I think a lot of the character's charm has kind of been lost as the character started going through a roughly 50-year identity crisis. At Superman's best, he is just a guy who also happens to have godly powers and be literally invincible. But being that the character is coming up on 90 years old, creators couldn't leave well enough alone and had to make the guy very, very convoluted. That isn't to say I hate the new Superman by any means, but I think this convolution and the stereotypes of Superman as a character makes people kind of count the guy out. I think Superman works best when he's simple, so the Superman serial or Superman 1948 or just Superman, which is decidedly as simple as it gets, is kind of amazing to me. Okay, so we talked a bit about the production as it related to the adventures of Captain Marvel a few videos ago, but to review, Republic, who made the Captain Marvel and Spy Smasher adaptations, wanted to make a Superman adaptation for a while, being forced to retool their first attempt into the film Mysterious Doctor Satan, and then later attempted to do it again, which led to a direct cancellation. National Comics also wanted creative control over the projects, and Superman the brand was sort of starting to sync up across the comics, newsprints, radio, and Max Fleischer cartoons, and with everything starting to form more of a standardized template for the character. Anyhow, it sat on the shelf until it started being pitched again in the late 1940s. Some of the big dogs like Universal passed on the film since they closed up their serials division, leaving those smaller studios like Republic and Columbia to fight over the scraps. Republic was actually offered the first chance to make the film that they wanted to make so bad for years, but they said it was not possible to bring Superman to the big screen despite making a film about the similar character Captain Marvel 5 years earlier. So the script was kicked over to Columbia, who already did their Batman adaptation. Kirk Alyn was casted as Superman, but in the film he's uncredited. This is because the marketing team wanted to market Kirk Alyn as just Superman, claiming they had to get the real deal to shoot a film this action heavy. Superman's film suit is brown and gray, since the contrast looked better on film than the traditional blue and red, though colorizations of the film colored the costume blue as red, as you can see here. It basically looks like the costume from the comics, just a wee bit sun-faded, but it's shot better apparently compared to the standard blue and red, which I guess would all look kind of washed and white, I suppose. The film opted to make animated sequences and pose over live-action footage in lieu of a lot of standard live-action effects, and a lot of historians, said it aged poorly and isn't convincing.
Something flew in the window.
It was a bird.
And look, I'll come back to this, but it's somewhat of a precursor to like CGI animation today, but just hand-drawn. I think this has some charm, honestly. Plus I have nightmares thinking of what the stunt team for Captain Marvel went through, so I'm fine with it, and it sells the fantasy aspect for me, so I don't really mind. The story of Superman, much like most serials, is pretty much all in the setup and the conclusion. Anyhow, you know the Superman origin. Jor-El sends his son to Earth. Since Krypton is exploding, the boy lands on Earth and is taken to the Kents, named Clark Kent. Anyhow, his parents die, so he heads to Metropolis and joins the Daily Planet.
I think it's best that no one knows that he and Clark Kent are the same person.
Shortly after this, Clark's foster parents passed away.
This origin is very similar to the modern day origin, though usually in the modern origin, one or both of his parents live while he leaves town. And some beats are changed, but for the day, this is startlingly accurate. Regardless, he meets Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Perry White while looking for a job at the Daily Planet, and is basically hazed by the old employees, but he uses some subtle supermanning to earn himself a spot and respect among the planet.
And what can I do for you?
I'd like to see the boss.
Oh, that'd be Mr. Perry White, the managing editor, only you can't see him.
Why not?
On account of he went temporarily crazy over a train wreck that didn't happen.
This is when the Spider Lady starts committing crimes, some of which involves kryptonite, and some that involve her death laser, because of course she has a death laser.
Do you know whether they're testing the relativity reducer ray soon?
Well, if they're not, they've certainly wasted a lot of time and money building a target.
I don't want that test held until I get a scientist out there to observe it.
Anyhow, blah blah blah, the next 3 hours go by, and we're at the final part where Superman confronts the Spider Lady, who accidentally kills herself with her own reducer ray mega weapon. Superman first appeared in Action Comics #1, and we went over his origin already in this video. What I will say is that Kirk Alyn's take in this film is incredibly accurate. There's something slightly scary about the old school Superman. Like, bro is way too jolly at all times, kind of like a Santa Claus, like smiling.
Turn it on him, destroy him!
But I guess that's part of the appeal of Superman, especially in this era, and I think this film captures that early Superman to a T. This man couldn't have a bad day no matter what you did to him. Lois Lane accompanied Superman in his first appearance of Action Comics #1, and is a spunky female beat reporter that is occasionally a damsel in distress, but a lot of the time can hang with the boys. She has a crush on Superman, and for lack of a better term, is a total asshole to Clark. Early Lois isn't super deep, but for the day was fairly progressive, I suppose, and I think the film brought her to life quite well. Noelle Neal played Lois here, and she took a ton of pride in the character and the franchise in general, doing events about Superman up to her death in 2016.
Oh, it's just 3 days of the town turns totally into Superman. Of course, they have a huge statue in front of the main building there of George. I mean, of somebody in the outfit. And all the little shops have Superman stuff. And it's just Superman. They have contests for the little children. And all the parents come from wherever they come from. It's amazing, just packed. And all the little kids have their cute little outfits on, and some of the parents. And it's just a lot of fun.
She would play the character through the George Reeves run on Superman, his TV show, and cameo in the Superman film from 1978, playing Ella, Lois's mom, then playing a woman, Alexis, in an episode of Superboy, the TV show from the 80s, before squeezing one more appearance in Superman Returns as Gertrude 10 years before her death. If you don't know Noelle, just know she's kind of a Superman legend, mostly just because of her sheer devotion to the character. In this film, she gives off Kimmy Gibble vibes, but her Lois is largely the foundation moving forward that people like Margot Kidder would build off of later down the line.
Persuading the cops to put Hackett in with Ann. And then what? We've been here for hours.
We may be here a lot of hours.
Perry White first appeared in the radio show for Superman before appearing in the comics in Superman 7 from 1940, basically replacing George Taylor, the original editor of the Daily Star, which is the original continuity's name for the Daily Planet. Anyhow, you get the idea. Perry White is a hardened kind of asshole old newsman, and he just wants the next big story. Jimmy Olsen first appeared in Action Comics 6, though he wouldn't actually be named till the radio show. He was a junior reporter in the original continuity and in the film. The photographer stuff came with the character's overhaul in the late 50s, along with the redesign to make Jimmy a redhead with freckles. The Jimmy in the film is aged up a bit, probably to make it easier for him to have a proactive role in the story. Jor-El was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and first physically appeared in newsprint, but was part of Superman's origin from the get-go. Fun fact about Jor-El is that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster actually first used the character in the comic New Adventure Comics 12, or at least the name. It's just a weird name they came up with, since it took letters from Jerry Siegel, or Jerome Siegel's name, I guess. It was his sci-fi OC or something. There you go, more pointless trivia for you. His wife Laura appears here too, though she doesn't have much going on in this film. Finally, Spider Lady, who is original to the film, however in 2022 she would be adapted to the comics as an alternate universe version of Lois Lane during Batman Superman Volume 2, number 16. No idea why comic creators have been really interested in pulling shit from the old serials and stuff lately, but I find it kind of fun. I just noticed that a lot of these characters have kind of been resurging in the rebirth era of DC Comics. Superman, or Clark Kent, is the main character, and this is the character at his most pure. A simple, airheaded yet cunning Clark Kent with the bold and confident Superman as his alter ego. Nothing really causes this guy to waver, he just does what's right no matter what. I think Kirk Alyn's portrayal would also act as the blueprint for many future adaptations, but I can't help but directly see both of our Reeves Supermen, that is, George and Christopher respectively, having had done similar things with their run later on.
At the risk of losing the reducer ray?
We won't lose it, I promise. But it may enable us to capture the Spider Lady and Dr. Hackett.
Well, if it were anyone else, I would say no.
This isn't a tortured Superman like Henry Cavill's. Not much can kill him, and he's almost irritatingly confident throughout the film. I love it. This is, in my opinion, just a super pure version of the character, who of course has been expanded so much over the decades, but I can't help but love the character in this film. I don't know if I'd want to see a modern Superman film where he's all jolly and jumping around, but there's something kind of comfy about a soft, low-stakes, black and white movie where Superman just smiles and occasionally punches a crook. Lois is the love interest and the damsel, but much like Lois in the comics, is driven and will step on others to get ahead, and by others I mean mostly Clark Kent. Damn, let that man do his thing. Like, fuck off a bit there.
Oh, Sergeant, no, that isn't. But listen, I know, yes, no.
Anyhow, there isn't much of a love plot in this film, but Lois is definitely an admirer of Superman and a Clark Kent hater. She's unique compared to a lot of the other female characters in these serials, pretty much exclusively because she has some level of drive and motivation to her actions, which is more than I can say about the numerous other females in most of these serials. I don't have much to say about Jimmy, but that he's a plucky sidekick, but that's kind of a given with him. And other than his shockingly long-running series, which mind you had a heavy supporting focus on Superman, he's always just kind of been a plucky side character for Lois and Clark to bounce off of, and not much more. Spider Lady is pretty much your run-of-the-mill serial villain. She wants to make a death laser. Wow, original. No, but I actually do kind of like the costume, and the fact that it's a woman and she looks kind of unique probably makes her the most memorable villain costume of all the serials we've watched.
But in your hands it'd be used only in the forces of destruction.
Do you dare to defy me?
Why not? You can only kill me.
Was she amazing? No. She's nothing crazy, but I like that we get something a bit different at least. This movie is just fun. What else can really be said about the tone of a film like this? Terrible, dangerous stuff is happening, and Superman is just having a great time. Clark and Lois's rivalry is a treat, and the setups are fun, if a bit unremarkable occasionally. I also just think the cast was having fun, and it kind of leaked off onto the screen. It's a good time, and actually worthwhile, mostly for its incredibly breezy superhero tone. Misha Belkavdalovitukatov, I can't say Russian last names, sorry guy. But he did the music, and it's a bit all over the place. One thing I won't hate on though is the score that the film plays at the start of each episode. It's an absolute banger and a beautiful start to the dense history of Superman film scores. The film was directed by Spencer Gordon Bennett. This is notable because this was his first DC serial. He will direct literally every other film serial we'll talk about in this video, which in fairness works for me since this film was pretty well directed, the casting is great, and the acting is what you want from a Superman product from this time, especially considering the era. And he surrounded himself with other great talent, or I should say he reined in that talent. The reason I say that is that Ira H. Morgan shot the film. You may remember I wasn't in love with his Hop Harrigan work, mostly because the plane stuff was really bad. But here he shoots the movie fine. Though this is perhaps bolstered by the fact that this film was actually a really high quality print, since this one's available on DVD from Warner Brothers, a luxury most of these films don't have. That probably meant this one had a good master and got rescanned by Warner Brothers. Earl C. Turner edited this, and yeah, it was well edited. The action is cool, the effects, while really blatant, are integrated well, and it's paced well enough for what it is. I actually don't really mind this cartoon looking effects. There's something kind of charming about it, especially given that this is basically the technique we do today with CGI, and it involves less throwing stuntmen off of whatever the hell and hoping they survive. The Krypton stuff is really cool. It's definitely vintage sci-fi, and cheap vintage sci-fi at that, but it looks cool. One thing I find funny is that everyone on this planet is super at all times.
For it boasted a race of super men and women. Among the leaders was Jor-El, the foremost man of science.
In the lore today, Superman wasn't born super. It's a series of factors from him leaving Krypton, such as Earth's yellow sun, which solar powers him and whatnot. I do like, though, that this film played it pretty accurate and didn't bother reinventing the wheel almost at all. And you may say I have complimented the accuracy in these films a lot, and that's true. Most of these serials are actually fairly accurate, but it's not necessarily a given.
Off the building will collapse. Get out, I'll try to stop it.
The Captain America serial is virtually unrelated outside of the costume to Captain America. I talked about this a bit, but I will reiterate. I don't get the hate on the clearly 2D animated sections in lieu of flying effects. I think it looks fine, and in context of how much modern animation and CGI goes into superhero films today, I think it's kind of fun and fitting to see a very, very early prototype of these effects added in post. It's the golden age CGI, so to speak. Oh, I also thought this shot was really funny.
This kryptonite is supposed to handle him.
Bro just granny style tossed kryptonite at Superman, which was a surprisingly effective way of taking him out. Chapter 15 of this serial is called The Payoff, which I think was a reference to the story, but since the film is 15 parts at the standard serial padding, it really did feel like The Payoff, all of which was crammed into this segment and this segment alone. Finally, I like that the Spider Lady gets fucking vaporized and everyone's like, what was Clark doing this whole time? Then they find him pretending to be sleeping midday like, my brother. Wake the fuck up.
Oh, I was just having a wonderful dream.
You weren't dreaming by any chance that you were Superman?
That's exactly what I was, Lois.
Overall, I had a great time with this one. It isn't perfect by any means and still has that serial padding one would expect from the day. But Clark, Lois, and Jimmy are just so charming. It wasn't a chore to sit through this one, the way some of these films kind of ended up being. Also, the simplicity and stripped-back nature of this film makes it a delightful leisure watch, especially when you do what I did, watch a few parts per sitting rather than just tackling the whole thing at once. I can see why Warner claims this one, with the company putting out a beautiful DVD of this film in really cool digipack packaging. Even if I would have loved a Blu-ray or dare I say 4K copy rather than the DVD, but that's just me. It also makes sense they really claimed this film and not say Batman.
You Jap murderer! If you value your life, you better address me as Dr. Daka. I know who you are.
Because if I'm being frank, this movie won't really rustle any feathers when compared to Batman. Superman must have been some sort of success because it wouldn't take long for the film to get a sequel in Atom Man vs. Superman from just 2 years later, which we'll talk about soon.